In 1923, a German banker named Friedrich Hecker watched his life savings buy less than a cup of coffee. He'd spent 30 years building a respectable fortune, government bonds, a pension, a savings account at a reputable Berlin bank, all denominated in marks, all worthless by November. Meanwhile, a wheat farmer 40 miles outside the city, a man with no education, no financial sophistication, no connections, was richer than he'd ever been. His grain was worth more every single day. People were trading pianos, fur coats, and family silver for bags of flour. Same crisis, same country, same year. Completely opposite outcomes. And the thing that separated them wasn't luck, or timing, or intelligence. It was what they held. This is a story about the things that survive when money dies. And if you think it's ancient history, that it couldn't happen today, consider this. Every single fiat currency ever created has either collapsed or lost the vast majority of its value. Every one. The dollar has lost over 96% of its purchasing power since 1913. We're not outside this pattern. We're inside it. This pattern, specific types of assets surviving while everything else burns, isn't unique to Germany. It shows up in every major currency crisis, every hyperinflation, every financial collapse across 4,000 years of recorded history. The assets change their names. They never change their nature. So what are they, and why do they keep working when nothing else does? The first asset that survives every crisis is the most ancient one: land. Not land as a line item on a portfolio spreadsheet. Productive land, the kind that grows food, holds minerals, or sits on water. When currencies collapse, the economy doesn't stop. People still eat. They still need shelter, fuel, raw materials. And whoever controls the source of those things holds real power, regardless of what's happening to the money. In Weimar Germany, farmers who owned their land outright became the new aristocracy almost overnight. They could demand payment in gold, in foreign currency, or in goods. A pig farmer could trade a single hog for a grand piano that once cost a banker 3 months' salary. That's not an exaggeration. That's from the historical record. In Zimbabwe's collapse in 2008, the same pattern played out. Farmers with productive land and livestock had something people would trade anything for. Urban workers with savings accounts, denominated in Zimbabwean dollars, had nothing. The reason is simple. Land produces things that have value independent of any currency. A bushel of wheat feeds a family whether the dollar is worth 100 cents or half a cent. That independence from the monetary system is what makes land the oldest crisis-proof asset in human history. The second asset is gold. And before you roll your eyes, this isn't about gold bugs or conspiracy theories. This is about math and human behavior. When a currency fails, an entire society needs something to use as money. Not eventually, immediately. And for thousands of years, the thing humans default to is gold. Not because it's magical, because it's recognizable, divisible, portable, and critically, no government can print more of it. During the French Revolution, the government issued paper currency called assignats. They were backed by seized church lands, and for a while, people trusted them. Then the government printed more and more. Within 5 years, assignats had lost over 99% of their value. People who had converted their paper into gold early preserved everything. People who waited lost everything. The same dynamic played out in Argentina in the 1980s, in Russia in the 1990s, in Venezuela in the 2010s. Gold didn't perform well because of some mystical property. It performed because when official money breaks, humans revert to the oldest monetary technology available, and whoever holds it becomes the person everyone else needs to deal with. There's a pattern here that's worth paying attention to. Gold doesn't make you rich in stable times. It makes you solvent when everyone else is broke. That's a very different function, and it's the reason central banks, the very institutions that issue paper currency, hold more gold today than at any point in the last 30 years. They know something. Maybe we should pay attention to what they do, not what they say. The third asset is harder to see, but it might be the most powerful one. It's businesses with pricing power. Not every business survives a crisis. Most don't. But there's a specific type that not only survives, it gets stronger. These are companies that sell things people cannot stop buying, and that can raise prices as fast as the currency falls. Think about it. If you make luxury handbags and a currency crisis hits, your customers vanish. But if you produce cooking oil, electricity, medicine, or fuel, demand doesn't drop. It can't. And if you're the one producing it, you can adjust your prices daily, weekly, even hourly to keep up with inflation. During Brazil's chronic inflation in the 1980s, which ran at thousands of percent per year, supermarket chains repriced their shelves multiple times a day. Companies that produced essential goods maintained their real margins. Companies that couldn't reprice fast enough, those selling on long-term contracts at fixed prices, got destroyed. The principle is the same everywhere. In Argentina, in Turkey, in any inflationary environment, the businesses that survive are the ones that can pass cost to consumers instantly because those consumers have no alternative. That's not greed. That's the structural reality of who gets to keep their purchasing power and who doesn't. The fourth asset is foreign currency. Specifically, holding claims denominated in someone else's stable money when your own is collapsing. This is the one that separates the wealthy from the middle class in almost every currency crisis in modern history. The wealthy move their money offshore or into dollar-denominated assets before the collapse accelerates. The middle class, who hold everything in local currency, local bank accounts, local bonds, local pensions, watch it evaporate. In Latin America during the 1980s debt crisis, the pattern was textbook. Wealthy families had dollar accounts in Miami, real estate in New York, holdings in Swiss francs. When local currencies collapsed across Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, their wealth was untouched. Meanwhile, a schoolteacher in Buenos Aires, who had diligently saved for 30 years in peso-denominated accounts, lost essentially everything. The mechanism is brutally straightforward. If your wealth is denominated in the currency that's failing, your wealth fails with it. If it's denominated in something else, you watch the crisis from the outside. This is why in every country that has experienced monetary instability, the demand for US dollars, Swiss francs, or any perceived stable currency explodes. People aren't making an investment thesis. They're running for the exit, and the ones who get there first keep the most. It's also why capital controls, governments restricting how much money you can move abroad, are almost always one of the first signs that a crisis is accelerating. When the government starts locking the exits, it's because people are already trying to leave. The fifth asset is real estate, but not the way most people think about it. In a currency crisis, real estate doesn't protect you because prices go up on a screen. It protects you because a building is a physical thing that people need, and its replacement cost rises with everything else. You can't print an apartment building. You can't inflate away the concrete, the steel, the labor it took to build it. In Weimar, Germany, apartment owners in Berlin saw the nominal value of their buildings skyrocket into the billions of marks, meaningless numbers. But here's what mattered. When the crisis ended and a new currency was established, those buildings were still there, still collecting rent, still worth real purchasing power. The people who had held marks in a bank account came out with nothing. The people who had held buildings came out whole. The same thing happened in post-Soviet Russia in the early 1990s. As the ruble disintegrated, apartment owners in Moscow discovered that their real estate, which they'd often received for free during privatization, was suddenly their most valuable possession. Everything denominated in rubles was gone. The walls and the roof remained. Real estate works in a crisis for the same reason land works. It exists outside the currency system. It's a physical object with utility that doesn't depend on what any government decides about its money. You can change the currency. You can't change the fact that people need a place to live. There's a sixth asset, and it's the one almost nobody discusses: skills. In every major currency crisis, there's a class of people who come through relatively unscathed, not because of what they own, but because of what they can do. Doctors, electricians, mechanics, engineers. Anyone whose skill is essential and whose payment can be negotiated in real time. In Hungary's 1946 hyperinflation, the most extreme ever recorded, where prices doubled every 15 hours, factory workers demanded daily wage adjustments. Government employees on fixed salaries were wiped out. But a skilled plumber who could set his own price for each job, he ate. This isn't a soft motivational point about investing in yourself. It's a hard economic reality. When currency breaks down, the economy reverts to something closer to barter. And in a barter economy, the person who can fix your pipes, treat your illness, or repair your car has more negotiating power than someone holding a government bond worth less than the paper it's printed on. Skills are the only crisis-proof asset that requires zero capital to acquire and can't be confiscated, inflated away, or taxed into nothing. And yet, they're the one almost everyone overlooks when thinking about financial protection. 6 assets. 6 categories that show up in every crisis across 4,000 years. Let me put them together. So here's what the historical record actually shows. In every major currency crisis, from ancient Rome debasing its silver coins, to revolutionary France, to Weimar Germany, to modern Venezuela, the same 6 categories of assets absorb the wealth that flows out of the collapsing currency. Productive land, gold, businesses with pricing power, foreign currency holdings, real estate, and essential skills. And in every single case, the people who got destroyed were the ones holding the most responsible assets: savings accounts, government bonds, pensions, fixed income instruments, the assets that financial advisors call safe. The assets that are safe right up until they aren't. The uncomfortable truth is that monetary stability is not the default state of civilization. It's the exception. Most currencies in human history have eventually failed or been dramatically devalued. The dollar has lost over 96% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was created. That's not a collapse. It's a slow erosion. But the direction is the same one that precedes every crisis in the historical record. None of this is a prediction. Nobody knows the timing of the next crisis, or whether it will be sudden or gradual. But the pattern of what survives and what doesn't, that pattern is 4,000 years old, and it has never been wrong. The question isn't whether you believe a crisis is coming. The question is whether the things you hold right now are the things that have historically made it through to the other side. Because when the next one hits, and the historical record says there will be a next one, it won't matter what you knew. It will only matter what you held. If this changed how you think about what you own, subscribe. I break down these patterns every week. And tell me in the comments, which of these 6 assets do you actually hold right now? I want to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.